Is it possible that pharmaceutical companies benefit from people's pain? In the docuseries Painkiller, the horrifying reality is revealed. This summary digs into the fascinating realm of the opioid problem, from addiction to corporate influence. A mind-bending odyssey through the shadowy worlds of medicine and big business awaits you. Don't miss out, and come along as I recap the thrilling Painkiller and reveal the truth. Hello Docutainment, with documentaries that truly enthrall, exploring real stories, big and small. The one to start with, the one to stay with, is the premiere episode. Have you ever considered the possibility that a single event could start a crisis on a global scale? A blaze breaks out in the lap of luxury. In a home that smacks of money and power, smoke alarms go off. But who would risk their lives by turning off the alarms in a burning empire? Meet Richard Sackler, a guy who has recently become aware of the dissonance between his actions and his conscience as he walks the fine line between power and corruption. Meanwhile, exhausted yet unwavering attorney Edie Flowers stands at the edge of reality, prepared to face a billion-dollar empire founded on the pain of millions. But stay with me here, for the story goes way back when. The echoes of dishonesty can be traced back to Roanoke, Virginia. As Edie Flowers digs deeper, she discovers a terrifying truth. The allure of money and power led several doctors to prescribe the narcotic painkiller OxyContin, altering their lives irrevocably. The suffering of Glenn Krieger is not limited to his body. Rather, it is the reverberation of a hopeless existence altered by a single event. Arthur Sackler left behind a haunting legacy, a clientele built on suffering and a marketing approach that preys on the weak. But it's Richard Sackler who makes a big deal out of a small problem, turning OxyContin from a life-saving drug into a devastating weapon. Our attention is drawn to Shannon Schaefer, and the question arises, can innocence survive when corruption is the chorus? A crescendo of manipulative orchestration. Shannon dances into a world where the glitz and glamour of lives sold for profit hide the bleak reality behind them. As the pain of North Carolina resident Glenn echoes throughout the land like an OxyContin echo, it plants the seeds for an impending storm. Edie Flowers' dogged pursuit of justice leads her to the shocking revelation that OxyContin's meteoric rise was masterminded by the evil Purdue Pharma. The impending disaster is depicted grimly in 1,000 prescriptions. The curtain descends on the opening act with everything in place. A story of avarice, addiction, and broken lives is told. Will the cries of the oppressed be heard above the din of corruption, or will justice ultimately triumph? As always, dear viewers, don't miss the next part of Painkiller. As night falls and the music of deception plays on, we descend farther into the pit of Painkiller. The second episode, titled Jesus Gave Me Water, draws viewers farther into the underworld, where the wicked are led by visions and individuals are caught in a web of addiction. Jesus Gave Me Water is the second episode. Have you ever wondered why certain people deliberately cause mayhem by using weaker people as pawns for their own nefarious ends? The story develops, revealing the inner workings of a corrupt government. The present day reveals the web of deceit that Arthur Sackler wove and Richard inherited like a spooky tune. To what extent Richard's ruthless rise through the ranks of Purdue Pharma is motivated by ambition or malice is left unclear by the ghost of his uncle. The action, however, moves back in time. Edie Flowers' dogged search for the truth takes her to drugstores, where the shadowy side of OxyContin's dominance first emerges. Do the victims exist, or are they props in some sick game? Edie gets a first-hand look at the terrible power of OxyContin during a trip to the pharmacy, and the experience leaves her with chills. She is rudely jolted into sober awareness by a lost soul whose addiction has led it to lunacy. We see the beginnings of doubt as Britt and Shannon dance on the edge of morality. Shannon's moral compass is nudged and the halo of success begins to fade. But the unknown ahead of them consumes her fear. The more OxyContin holds on to him, the more pain Glenn is in. The drugs start helping, but soon they're all he can think about. But a horror lurks beyond the surface of his contentment, and it will destroy his life. When Purdue Pharma uses Glenn as a pawn in their scheme, an unholy alliance is formed. Is he aware of what he's doing, or is he just going along with the greedy program? Secrets are revealed and reasons are explored as the plot progresses. Edie reveals the shady science behind OxyContin, along with botched experiments and the fight to stay sober. Behind the FDA's Iron Curtain stands a lone figure who is willing to take on the empire, Curtis Wright. We get a glimpse of Edie's inner turmoil in the middle of the chaos. An encounter with an inmate and a distant sibling provide a glimpse into her mysterious history and hint at a larger story that has yet to be told. And as the climax draws near, a frightening instant throws its shadow. The drug's allure proved too strong for Glenn, and he passed out in a restaurant. Is this the end, when the cost of greed becomes prohibitive? Contrasting Richard's opulent triumph with the haunting reality of OxyContin's victims, the symphony of lying reaches its climax. Prepare yourselves, viewers, since the story of Painkiller develops with each passing second, bringing us closer and closer to the edge of the abyss. The story of Painkiller unfolds further into the night, like a spider's web in the midst of an endless storm. In Episode 3, Blizzard of the Century, we see a society where lies and destruction are intertwined. The inside storm is just as fierce as the external snow. After Glenn's near-fatal brush with OxyContin, the story throws us right into the aftermath. Is this the day of truth when the real risk of this medicine becomes apparent? As Edie exposes the Sackler family's control system, rumors of modern-day manipulation reverberate. The strange bond that Richard shares with his Uncle Arthur, a mysterious guide into the depths of darkness, begs the problems of ethics and manipulation. But then the story takes a turn, plunging us into the eye of the opioid crisis. Overdose is revealed in horrifying detail in Glenn's hospital room. The doctor's remarks reverberate around the emergency room as the drug's destructive power claims more victims. The dance of manipulation continues in the halls of power. Through the mice technique, the Sacklers and Curtis Wright form a partnership that helps them gain FDA clearance for OxyContin. Is corruption's tangled web able to drown out logic? After Purdue Pharma's huge success, Richard throws a party and conducts a symphony of lies to motivate his sales team to keep pushing OxyContin. The drug becomes a shadow that haunts every corner, snaring victims and lining pockets. OxyContin's dark appeal grows as Glenn fights off his demons. When quitting cold turkey, the border between relief and obsession can seem perilously thin. Is the prospect of eventual independence worth the pain of leaving it behind? Purdue Pharma's conference rooms throb with the promise of fortune, lurking in the shadows of power and profit. But Shannon's anxiety increases in the hubbub, and the shadows behind the glitz become more apparent. Edie gets to the bone-chilling center of the matter in her quest for justice. The toll that OxyContin has taken is terrible, as evidenced by morgues, autopsies, and the medical examiner's grim discoveries. In the fight against a drug-fueled epidemic, the sheriff finds himself a reluctant ally. The truth is slowly revealed as the past and the present intertwine. After visiting a prison, Edie learns that addiction has wounded her family for generations, and that the storm is only beginning. Glenn takes a risky step just as Shannon enters Purdue Pharma's stronghold, and Jess meets an untimely end. The orchestra of despair builds to a climax, the haunting refrain made up of the notes of manipulation and addiction. As the storm continues to rip apart people and reveal the deepest truths, the story of Painkiller delves deeper and deeper into the center of corruption and misery. The fourth episode, Is Believed, is a terrifying plunge into the depths of lying. The deceptive web continues to tighten while the manipulative dance goes on. Shannon joins the upper echelon at Purdue and achieves new heights, but there are clouds over her bright future. But are the benefits really as golden as they appear, or do they hide something more nefarious? When a drug crisis hits a country, cities like Blacksburg become the front lines of the dope economy. The homeless become cogs in a cruel machine, and pain clinics and pharmacies become pawnshops. How do you get out of this dangerous game? Edie and Brownlee travel to the depths of the underworld as they pursue justice in a world dominated by a sinister empire. In their pursuit of Purdue Pharma, they have been confronted with an incontestable truth. Taking on a corporation as powerful as Purdue Pharma is no simple task. But there is growing discontent across the country. The United States Attorney for Maine has stoked a tempest of indignation by labeling OxyContin a criminal and social menace. Will this public outrage finally bring down the imperial regime? Glenn's battle with addiction becomes increasingly dangerous as hidden truths emerge. He and everyone in his sphere are increasingly vulnerable to OxyContin's dark seduction. Shannon steers a perilous course as the protests heat up, all the while advocating for Perdue's tainted vision. However, Dr. Cooper appears as a dark figure in the midst of the mayhem, and his actions throw Shannon into a nightmare she could never have imagined. A glimmer of opposition shines through the matrix of manipulation. Dr. Fitzgibbons is the only one raising his voice against the lies of Purdue Pharma. But can the truths he speaks about cut through the web of lies? Purdue Pharma will have to answer to Congress soon. By analyzing Howard Udell's deposition, Edie discovers a deadly truth: the lies that underpin the Purdue empire. When the storm hits, will the walls of corruption fall or will they hold? A bizarre carnival of corruption and excess unfolds as the sun sets over the neon-soaked cityscape of Miami in the 5th episode of the riveting series Painkiller, welcoming you to Hot, 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 where a slick veneer of success hides a pit of anguish. Travel back through time to the origins of Arthur Sackler's legacy, a lesson in manipulating others that has been passed down through the generations. However, as past events reverberate in the present, the fight against Purdue Pharma becomes more urgent. As the fight moves to Purdue, Edie's quest for the truth takes her into the heart of the beast. But behind the fortified gates of authority, a deadly game of talks is being played out. A tense standoff where any one wrong move may bring down the entire edifice. Glenn's desperation forces him to sell his soul in addition to his assets. Even as night falls, though, OxyContin's appeal remains immovable, a spectral siren's call drawing him deeper into the rabbit hole. An underground insurrection begins to take shape. Deborah Marlowe steps out of the shadows as a pawn-turned-player who now controls the secrets of Purdue. However, her inner demons are threatening to overtake her as she gets ready to testify. Right in the eye of the tempest, Purdue Pharma is celebrating its apparent success. Miami turns into a battlefield of excess and manipulation, a bizarre circus where OxyContin is king and deceit is the music the dancers move to. Once a willing player in Purdue's game, Shannon is now uncovering the hidden truth. As the glitzy exterior wears off, the reality of her involvement sets in, and the narcotic she sells threatens to engulf and destroy her. When Glenn is at his most withdrawn, he has an introspective moment with his demons. This is the story of one man's night of reckoning, his bloody fight for redemption and family, and the glimmer of light that emerges from the depths of despair. Shannon's inebriation progresses from elation to almost catastrophe as the Miami night progresses. As she sinks below the surface, she is confronted with the cold reality of her decisions and the sharp reflection of the road she has taken. Meanwhile, Glenn's development keeps progressing, which is a source of optimism in the midst of adversity. And the mastermind behind Purdue's act watches helplessly as the confetti rains down on Miami and his business begins to unravel. Shadows of justice and legacy mix in the heartbreaking last scene of Painkiller, telling a story of truth and sadness. Enter the world of What's in a Name, where the power of a family's legacy collides with the ghosts of the past. As the evidence against Purdue Pharma mounts, Shannon becomes an essential cog in the wheel of justice. Edie and Brownlee's team start their uphill effort to bring the firm accountable with her incriminating proof in hand. But justice is a mercurial creature, often swayed by the influence of money and power. As legal heavyweights step up to defend Purdue, the system they are sworn to uphold collapses under the weight of corruption, a shadowy dance of power orchestrated by those at the very top. Richard Sackler feels the room closing in on him as a ghostly reminder of his history lingers there. Bloody confrontations between the past and the present devastate Richard's life as Arthur's vision accuses him. But even in the midst of the mayhem, there is hope. Once caught in Oxy's web, Glenn now battles his problems with unflinching determination. But destiny is a cruel mistress, and his sad end is sealed by a single mistake that will have far-reaching consequences for everyone whose lives have been affected by the opioid crisis. The fallout of Shannon's revelations put her in the corridors of treachery. An explosion of rage from Britt, a friendship burned to the ground by lies. Despite being cut loose from Purdue, Shannon is confidently walking down her new road. In the end, Edie learns the truth about her relationship with her brother through his letters. She manages to find common ground amid the rubble, which is a moving monument to the transformative potential of empathy and forgiveness. A settlement covers up the Empire's faults as it falls apart, leaving victims behind as the system abandons them. But while the Sacklers themselves escape harm, their wealth leaves a wound on the social fabric. The sad ending has finally arrived. The price of unbridled authority in excess of 300,000 lives lost. Even while justice has yet to be achieved, the truth's reverberations show that the fight is far from done. What's our summary? If you found this recap insightful and thought-provoking, don't miss out on more engaging content. Subscribe to remain up to date on future recaps, deep dives, and conversations on relevant topics. Painkiller is a fantastical reimagining of a tragic true story that many of us know all too well. It relies on eye-catching visuals that almost overpower an engaging story, which is why it can't hold a candle to dissect. The play is interesting in its own way, and the acting and technical parts are both really good. Matthew Broderick is a joy to watch in any capacity. Perhaps the most touching part of the show is the sincere warnings at the beginning of each episode. The despicable Sacklers can now retreat into the shadows, safe from any further legal action, to spend their offshore fortune in peace. No one has been arrested or sentenced to jail time. The removal of the Sackler name from the buildings they helped finance with their ill-gotten wealth, including sections of museums and hospitals, may be the only consolation. Their only lasting legacy is shame,